This is Comic Geek Speak, episode 1647, Off the Racks.
You got it on Wednesday, and it was like about it going to the volume up. These guys will talk about it, everything the geeks love. From kids to laser beams, opinions like the seasons on everything you read. And comics, movies, games, toys, artists, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek Speak, Comic Geek. Uniting the world's mightiest heroes. This is...
I'm Brian Chrisman.
I'm Adam Murdo.
And I'm Chris Everly.
Comic Geek Speak.
And welcome to the show. In this episode, we will be reviewing some recent-ish titles.
Yeah,
I mean,
for us, a couple of months ago.
yes, you want to go over the titles you're reviewing this episode, Adam?
Happy to, since I happen to have them in a stack in front of me. We have the first issue of the latest Nova series put out from Marvel. From DC, we have the first issue of the Supergirl Being Super limited series. And from Dynamite Entertainment in co-production with DC, the first issue of the Wonder Woman 77 Meets the Bionic Woman limited series.
Yes. And we may also discuss some TV talk on Iron Fist and Legion. But first, a word from our sponsor. This episode of Comic Geek Speak is brought to you by SuperheroStuff.com. We go to for all of your superhero stuff. That's right.
Staggered.
Again, for all your geek needs, they're the place to go. Whether you're looking for T-shirts, hats, hoodies, PJs and undies, belts, accessories, home office, whatever, they've got it. Such a huge selection. Always adding new items, always having promotions, so check out the site, their Facebook, their newsletter. Some of the new items that recently had hit their warehouse. They have some items for the new Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 movie, whether it's T-shirts, decals, keychains, what have you. There's some Deadpool things here. I see a Deadpool X-Force bifold wallet. Again, like I mentioned, they also have a lot of the pop figures that are very popular right now, no pun intended. Glasses.
Because popular contains the syllable pop.
That's correct. And bags and what have you. They will also be doing some conventions this season. They will be at the upcoming C2E2 in Chicago. But yeah, check out their website for their content you're going to go to and just for all the coupons and everything. So once again, superherostuff.com you can go to for all of your superhero stuff. And up front here, if you don't mind, I have a couple of mini announcements. Recently, Chris, I see you're on an episode of the Comic Source podcast. You want to talk about that briefly?
Yes, I was going to just do a shout-out to Jace, thanking him for his wonderful hospitality. He had me on. We actually recorded it last night, Monday, March 27th, and we discussed Garth Ennis's and Simon Colby's Dreaming Eagles miniseries from Aftershock.
Your nomination for tribute. Best Limited Series of 2016, in fact. Indeed.
A wonderful tribute to the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II. We talked about the backstory, the history, our take on the comic, and just our love of military comics in general. It was a wonderful time, and thanks again to Jace for the kind invitation.
Yep, it's episode 190 of the Comic Source podcast. I'm sure it's on the iTunes. Or you can go to thecomicsourceblog.com to find the episode. Chris, another thing for you. Have you made any plans you can talk about for Free Comic Book Day?
Pantaloons, you read my mind.
Oh, yes. All right. Hit me with the deets.
Thanks, Grizzly Adams. All right, so...
He had a
so, yeah, we have the details for... The bulk of the details for Free Comic Book Day. So, one important announcement is this is the last year we will be participating in... Not in running a sale, but in the Free Comic Book Day, because I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm dumping my Diamond account within the next few months. So this is the last time we'll be having the Free Comic Book Day books at the shop.
Understood.
Otherwise, we're going to have our annual Titanic Spring Sale. This will be our 18th anniversary. And let's see. I'm going to Pittsburgh in a few weeks, and I have a lot of new back issues, both bargain bin stuff, sticker books, and wall books. And all back issues will be 25% off. All of our used trades will be 25% off. our new trades, we have several bookcases of those. We're starting them at 40% off for the sale, since we'll be phasing out, moving everything over to the used category over time. When we're not going to be getting in, again, new shipments, so 40% off those. We're going to have a raffle, the return of the raffle, Pansy.
Raffle! Hot
Yes.
damn! All right. Ugh. Out of my way, people.
Hot diggity damn. That will be at approximately 3 p.m. And, of course, it'd be helpful to actually mention the date of this event and the time.
Saturday, May 6th.
Yep, Saturday, May 6th. Doors open at noon, and we'll be running through 6 p.m. So, we may come up with some additional treats and surprises. By then, eventually I'll start announcing items for the raffle, for example, as the date gets closer. But again, I would encourage any listener who is within driving distance or will happen to be in the region, and hell, even if you're not, if you love back issues, please stop by, because short of going to a good old-fashioned comic show in your town, I don't mean like a multimedia, third string guy in the back from Welcome Back Kotter was there. I'm talking about, sheer comics, back issues, the whole kit and caboodle. We're the store to stop at. Unbeatable prices, great selection, 30,000 back issues in stock. Hell, I'm making a trek 6 hours away to get even better stuff for this event. So hope to see a lot of our listeners there on May 6th, and Pants and Murd will be there as well.
Yes, so we will.
And once again,
not sure about Shane, but
once again, that's
what's that?
Wild Pig Comics at 14 South Michigan Avenue, Kenilworth, New Jersey. Go to wildpigcomics.com.
Amen. Thanks, Pansy.
Oh, you're very welcome. Also coming up, the April 21st to the 23rd is the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo, otherwise known as C2E2, held at Chicago, and Murd and I will be heading out there this year. We won't have a table or anything, but a good place to try and find us will be at booth P7 in RS Alley, where Julie Benson and Shauna Benson will be holding up court. They will be there selling their copies of the Who is Oracle trade, the first collection of Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, as well as some single rebirth issues. So if you want to stop by and say hi to them, and we might be there, or it's a good place to try and find us in any events. Looking forward to that, and that's a pretty decent show for back issues that I've been finding in the past. So I'm going to do some bin diving of my own, looking for some cheap dollar books.
Yes. There's a few holes in my world's finest comic collection I'm hoping to fill.
How far back do you go with that?
Not very, but I'm looking for 1970s.
I'm not bragging or anything, but...
yes, it's all right. I just happen to give you the opportunity. So. No, but I'm looking forward to that show also.
Yeah, because you don't usually fly to many shows during the year.
Right, and it's been, at least 6 years since I've been out to Chicago.
Yeah, 2011 we were there, you, me, and Peter.
Right, it was a good time.
That was a good time.
Yeah, and it'll be good bargains to be had and good company in the offing.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll see some Uncle Sal.
Oh, I'm hoping to see Sal. Very much so. All right, well then let's dive into the episode, talking about these books. Now, I have not read these books before, so I will be more or less your moderator, if you will, or narration. So, which do you want to start with first?
Any preference, Chris?
I got to be up front. This was a rough month. Yeah. At least, did these come out in December, Murd?
They did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think between Chris and myself, these are not going to be the most positive reviews, I'm afraid.
No. Let's take the painter. Let's start with Wonder Woman 77 and the Bionic Woman.
All right. Well, I will read the original solicit for this title. It's Wonder Woman / Bionic Woman 77. This is issue number 1 of 6. Written by Andy Mangels with art by Judith Tondora. Hardly like it's 1977 in this crossover event fans have wanted for decades, but never thought possible. Now, Diana Prince meets Jamie Summers. Or should we say, Wonder Woman meets the Bionic Woman? In this action-packed miniseries, the two television titans team up, love that alliteration, team up to fight a rogue cabal bent on wreaking havoc and stealing deadly weapons. Can Castra be stopped before their real targets are revealed and lives are lost? With superpowers, bionic enhancements, surprise villains, and an invisible plane, just about anything is possible. Now, you said this is between Dynamite and DC Comics, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
All right. Well, gentlemen, let's give your ratings, please. Well, of course, we're going the time-tested Buy Borrow Pants rating system.
And there are gradations between those three ratings as well.
There are.
I will be using one of those for this. This is a bar ants for me.
Ooh, okay.
I take no pleasure in giving this just a cascade of pants.
Oh, wow. Whole clothesline, eh?
Yeah.
All right. Well, shall I begin?
Well, sure.
I'll begin. Okay. Well, I'll start by saying that I'm a few enjoyment notches below some other fans to begin with. In that I'm not all that familiar with the two entertainment properties in which this is based.
Because, of course, you're a youngster. You were born after they were on the air.
This is true. How many seasons did the Linda Carter Wonder Woman series last?
Three.
Okay.
Yep.
Beginning in 77 or 76?
I'm not be sure. To the internet.
Well, okay, you do that. Anyway, I was born in 79, so I am, even at the age of 38, I'm a few years too young to really have experienced these series in their heyday, and the reruns, for one reason or another, were not around in my youth. I have seen a few episodes of the Linda Carter Wonder Woman series on MeTV. They're on Saturday nights right now. But I have never seen an episode of The Bionic Woman. I've never even seen an episode of The $6 Million Man, of which Bionic Woman was a spinoff.
You kids today.
I know. I'm just a wet-nosed whippersnapper.
This election started out in 75, and there were 60 episodes over the next 3 years.
Okay. So, yes, I've
4 years, whatever.
I was born a little bit too late. But so, this series was not suffused in the warm, welcoming nimbus of nostalgia that such things would be for
oh, my God!
Slightly older fans. So I've missed out on whatever level of enjoyment that might have provided. However...
That's slow motion running.
Yeah. I think the onomatopoeia they used for that sound effect is dee-nee-nee-nee-nee. Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
As Lindsay Wagner, or the illustrated equivalent of Lindsay Wagner, jumps up to a high catwalk. Anyway, on the bright side, I don't feel as if the first issue of this miniseries contains a whole lot of deep references to either of the series in which it's based. I don't think there was anything in there too esoteric for the neophytes such as myself to feel left out for missing. I like that writer Andy Mangels doesn't make us wait until the end of the first chapter to see the first meeting of the two titular heroines. They have their little meet-cute as a building suddenly explodes in the very opening scene. And I like the fact that they immediately form a bond of sororal mutual admiration and affection for one another. I like the interplay between them. I like the fact that Jamie Summers immediately tumbles to the fact that Diana Prince and Wonder Woman are one and the same, which is more than anybody in Diana's life generally knows. Any of her coworkers at the IADC, they never seem to figure it out. So that's one bright spot here, the fact that these two title characters, for whom Andy Mangels does have a very strong affection himself. He's a big fan of both franchises. He's kind of an unofficial Wonder Woman historian. He contributed an essay or two to DC's Wonder Woman 77 80-page giants. He has one of the world's largest collections of Linda Carter Wonder Woman memorabilia. So he is a big fan. And he's no stranger to comic book writing either. He has written a bunch of scripts over the past 20 years. But, and this is a big but, I'm afraid that's where I have to cease being complimentary, because this is not a very well-made comic book, in my opinion. After the opening sequence where the two characters become acquainted, things become awfully murky. There's a 2-page scene where a whole bunch of different representatives of IADC and OSI, for whom Bionic Woman works, get together, and in far too many dialogue balloons of exposition telling the reader far too little information, we're told that there's a new threat, some new terrorist cell called Castra that might be out there doing something bad. And the assembled agents are now going to break up into teams and run around doing things to possibly stop whatever bad stuff these terrorists are supposedly doing. And what follows are several pages of very poorly coordinated and orchestrated action. I found it actually fairly difficult to follow. There's no context for what any of these characters were running around doing. The artwork well, honestly, on both the level of story and art, this comic was distractingly simplistic. And this is not the good kind of simplistic I'm talking about here, not the commendable kind of simplicity that bespeaks an artist who is a master of his or her craft. No, I'm thinking more like crude and amateurish. That's the kind of simplicity I'm afraid this comic displays. The art has kind of a rough, simplistic charm, but it's the kind of charm one associates with memories of reading those glossy-covered, floppy pamphlet-style licensed kiddie books that you'd find at the magazine section of a grocery store. The artwork kind of reminds me of the art you'd find in those, or even in, dare I say it, in a coloring book. And speaking of coloring, the colorist is Stu Heifetz, which is a name I recognize from his work at DC back in the 90s. And there's a little bio for him at the end of this issue saying that he's been working a lot in children's books over the past 20 years. So maybe he just didn't shift out of that mode when he did his coloring work for this issue. And that might explain, in part, my reaction to this, that it makes me feel like I'm reading one of those kiddie books. And then on the writing side, some of the dialogue balloons that Andy Mangels writes made me feel like I was reading an issue of Spidey Super Stories, which is, I guess, appropriate for 1977.
True.
But reading this as an adult in 2017, not really what I want to be reminded of, if you see what I'm saying. So, yeah, it's the storytelling is murky and poorly organized. The dialogue isn't great. The art is a little primitive, simplistic. And there are supposedly going to be 3 bad guys showing up in this story eventually. We're probably introduced to all 3 of them here, although we're not told exactly who they are. There is a mysterious cloaked woman with an armored boot. I'm hoping, actually, that she might turn out to be Dr. Cyber, who's like a classic Bronze Age Wonder Woman villain from the comics. And, I think Andy Mangels actually opined in one of his essays about these Linda Carter Wonder Woman series that he didn't understand why they never used any of the villains from the comics. This might be his way to rectify that a little bit. So, that is one thing that sort of in a minor way piqued my interest for the following 5 issues of this 6-issue miniseries. But yeah, I'm hoping that this is just a case of Andy Mangels being so excited and enthusiastic to work on these characters he cares about so much that his enthusiasm caused him to get in his own way and prevent him from doing his best work on this first issue, and that maybe he'll settle down and things will become a little more readable in future issues. But yeah, this is not a well-made comic, and it came very close to just being a pants for me. And now we will hear from Chris, who gave this not only a pants, but a multiple pants.
Yeah, Murd, I think you hit the nail on the head. Admittedly, I barely got through this, and I frankly skimmed the last several pages. If we were not reviewing this for the show, I would have put it down after 3 or 4 pages. As I'm reading this now, I grew up with those shows. I watched both of them when I was a little kid. Loved them both, especially Wonder Woman. Watched the $6 Million Man as well. I had a huge $6 Million Man doll, and I had the doll of his opponent, the other robot guy.
I was in the fan club at the time too.
So I have some familiarity with these characters. I was looking forward to this, and Murd, you really summed it up very nicely. I was thinking, okay, is this being written for little kids? Which didn't make sense to me because the demographic for this book is people like me who grew up watching that show. So I was struck right away by how stilted and flat the dialogue and captions were. Everything was written in a very, very terse fashion. There was just no life to. It's like someone was reciting a really simplistically written script and delivering their lines in a very flat, matter-of-fact way. Just terribly dull. And I don't know if you noticed this, Murd, but about halfway through the book, the art seems to jarringly change.
Huh.
Okay. Go to the page where she becomes Wonder Woman, and then they show the helicopter whooping in the top. Now look at the page before that, and then turn it back.
Hmm.
And as you go through, the panel layouts are very cluttered and difficult to follow. The art seems to just almost become more and more out of focus, like the artist was rushing through the last several pages. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do. I mean, I hadn't noticed it the first time through. I'm not as sensitive to art as you are, Chris, but it could be exactly as you say. Maybe Judith Tondora was up against deadline.
Yeah, and I've read Andy Mangel's essays, and I really enjoy the Wonder Woman 77 books. I have no doubt he has talent. I mean, for pity's sake, Tom Warzakowski is a letterer on this. He's a tremendous letterer all the way going back to the Bronze Age. So it's not like they have, hacks on this book, but for whatever reason, it just missed the mark, and I'm sorry I couldn't recommend this to anybody. And I certainly wouldn't buy the second issue, not with how expensive comics are and all the books I'm trying to fit into my monthly reading schedule. So it's with great regret that I this is a calamitous pants, just a terribly mediocre piece of work, and definitely not worth $3.99. So.
A calamitous pants.
Yeah. Sorry to hear that. I
there is the verdict, folks.
I did have some interest in the book, but it's like, I'm really, really being picky now when I order new books, and I wasn't too keen on just the whole idea. And it's like, well, I'm glad you guys read it, so I don't have to.
Well, I gave you the chance to skim it.
Well, I skimmed it, and that was about all I needed to do for that.
One other comment I'll make, and this is a general comment, both as speaking as a retailer and as a reader. This stuff's expensive, folks, and if I'm dropping this kind of money to read a comic in this day and age, you have certain expectations in terms of just the quality and the professionalism of what you're getting, and it's just not here. And there could be other extenuating circumstances as to why that was the case, but there's just too many other great books out there that command my time and my dollars. So unfortunately, I have to pass this one by.
All right. Well, what do we do next?
How about we move to Nova next?
Okay.
Sure.
Nova #1, written by Jeff Loveness and Ramon Perez, with Ramon Perez doing the art. It says here in the description from back in the day, it says, Classified makes his roaring return to the Marvel Universe. How will Sam Alexander cope with this unfathomable homecoming? It's the return you've all been waiting for, or is something else. Strap in, true believer, you'll never seen a Nova book like this before. And we should have mentioned, if I didn't already, that spoilers for these books if I was lax in my duties here.
Yeah, we may not have mentioned that, but right. I'll try to work that into the episode description then.
Okay. Who wants to go first? How about you, Chris? Oh, good God, he's sighing. That's not a good
We're
sign.
sucking out Chris's soul tonight.
Oh, no.
We'll give it back to you in May.
No. Hey, look. Any chance to talk about comics, I'm elated, especially with you fine gentlemen.
Mutual, Chris, mutual.
Thanks, brother. This is a low borrow.
Yeah, it's just a borrow for me, too.
All right. I think it's fair to say Murd probably knows more of Nova's world than I do. I mean, I know the basics of Nova. I've read various adventures over the years, but nothing consistently. I knew what happened to Richard Rider, the Cancerverse. I'm familiar with that story and the basics of it. So I was interested in just seeing how he was coming back to the Marvel Universe. I'm not really familiar with the Sam Alexander character. I mean, actually, my first experience with him is on the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon that debuted some years back, and his character is used in that quite effectively, and I thought quite entertainingly. My biggest issue with this book, I didn't think it was terrible at all. I mean, compared to what we just discussed before, this is like Watchmen. But I think my biggest here, not my issue with it, is that I've read this story before, many times before, and done far more skillfully. There were so many aspects of this. I mean, granted, to be fair, Nova was really clearly inspired in many ways by Spider-Man when he was first created.
Truth. Back
in the Bronze Age. So inevitably, especially dealing with a now even much younger Nova, there's going to be that aspect to it, and I understand that. So I don't necessarily hold that against it. It's just that it's like I go back and I think about a book like Ultimate Spider-Man, for example. The first issue of that, which is far superior to what we're discussing right now. The classic premise of like the young teen gets powers, how he has to navigate high school, and his friends, and quirky adventures. throw in a bit about the fact that he's now in the New Champions. I guess I'm also just getting older and more curmudgeonly. There's just other types of books that far more, put steam in my strides, and this is not really it. And that may be something more about me than it is necessarily about this comic. But the only part of this comic I really found myself thoroughly enjoying was when he's lost in his head. He's trying to talk to a girl he finds attractive in front of his locker, and he imagines he'd rather be fighting every supervillain on Earth than dealing with speaking to her. And that's very entertaining. Delightful, quirky art in that scene. But otherwise, it's a story I've read just so many times, and it just left me kind of cold. I was interested in the Richard Rider scenes. I'd be interested to see what's going to happen with him. But there's just so many great books out there that it's tougher and tougher to fit the more hit or miss books into the reading pile. Because Murd, no offense, I don't want to get caught in a 10-year time bubble. So.
13.
It's gotten to that point, and it's not a fate I'd wish on anyone, Chris. So I don't blame you.
Thanks, brother. So I find I have to be a little more ruthless now with stuff I'm trying and either sticking with or not. So I think the book might have some potential because, again, I think the premise of Nova is a great premise. I've always enjoyed the premise of the character and all the cosmic implications, and then contrast to that when he's dealing with more mundane situations on Earth. And I like the idea of the Nova Corps, the helmet, all of that. So. I didn't think it was a bad book. It just didn't jazz me very much. So it's a low borrow.
Well, Chris, I think you hit upon a very important and central point, really, when you mention your own age as a consumer and the target age of the fan that is being courted by a book like this. I think. And I have read a certain number of Nova stories. It's true. I don't have that many of the original Bronze Age series, but I have like every issue of every series that's come out since the 90s. So I've been through Chris Marinin.
Annihilation.
Yes, exactly. Like the Abnett and Lanning stuff, and even back in the 90s, like the Eric Larson series, which lasted like less than a year, I'm pretty sure. I've seen Rich Rider through a few different permutations, and the main reason I was interested in this was because of his supposed resurrection. Like you, Chris, I know very little about Sam Alexander as a character. He's never really been of much interest to me, and well, if this issue is going to try and change my mind about that, I think it's going to have to work a little bit harder. So, like you, Chris, I was most interested in the scenes that had to do with Rich Rider, which are much in the minority in this book. There's really only two little scenes that have to do with Rich himself, which is fair. This is not really his book. It's supposed to be a new Sam Alexander series. And so the writer, Jeff Loveness, with assist by artist Ramon Perez. Loveness is a relative newcomer to comics. Apparently his day job, as it were, is as a writer for the Jimmy Kimmel Show. But he's done one or two other things for Marvel, including a Groot miniseries. I do, as you say, Chris, I see some potential in this, too, in terms of Loveness's writing. He shows enough self-awareness and skill as a writer to know that he's probably addressing himself to two different demographics with a book like this. People our age and also like a younger crowd. So that he's kind of self-consciously writing in two different tones, depending on which Nova he's focusing on. Like with Rich Rider, you've got more of the me generation, Bronze Age 70s introspection and self-pity going on. And with Sam Alexander, it's more like light, ebullient, bubbly adventure. Which, if anything, skews a little bit too young as far as I'm concerned. I mean, even granted that we're like in our 30s and 40s here, this is not really meant for us. But it seems like Loveness, he's trying to aim at a younger audience, but I think he may be aiming a little too young. He and Perez, in both the way that this story is written and drawn. Sam Alexander is supposed to be 15. He's supposed to be a ninth grader, but the tone of this adventure and just the way that the characters are presented, it makes them seem like they're 11-year-olds. And the story also seems like it's intended to appeal to 11-year-olds, which strikes me as a little strange. And it's kind of like in that the dream sequence you mentioned, where the art shifts like a Bill Waterston or a Chris Eliopoulos style of artwork. That was cute, but it just on a whole, the Sam Alexander parts of this issue struck me as like Diary of a Wimpy Kid approach to superhero storytelling. Yeah, it's not really my cup of tea. And I don't know what age group they're trying to court with this, but I don't know if they're actually going to be getting them. The scene. There's an action scene towards the beginning of the book where Sam is on Ego, the living planet, and rescuing Ego from an infestation of Sidri. I was a little surprised that Marvel greenlit anything involving Ego, the living planet, this close to the release of Guardians Volume 2. At least not without having him drawn to look like Kurt Russell. So that's just the badinage between Ego, the goatee planet, and Sam was a little annoying to me. And while I do give Loveness some credit for, as you said, Chris, that he did give some mention to the Nova's status quo as an ex-Avenger. He's just quit the Avengers, and he's formed the new Champions team with some of his fellow recent ex-Avengers, and rather than just giving it a passing mention, Loveness goes the extra mile and builds this into the warp and weft of the story. It becomes a recurring concern in Sam's thoughts. He and his friends just made this big, massive decision, and he's dwelling on it as an insecure young teenager is wont to do. So he keeps coming back again and again to, I'm not an Avenger anymore, I'm a champion, and it's okay. So I'm glad that Loveness did that. He kind of dealt into the current continuity of the character that far. So he did his homework there, but I give him a black mark for his use of the Sidrian hunters. He treats them as just kind of like vermin. They're just like, he flipped through an old issue of Ohatmu and saw the Sidri and was like, oh, look, here's a cool bug alien I can use as something for Sam to fight at the beginning of this issue. The Sidri are supposed to be sentient beings, these black, red-eyed, manta ray-looking things at the beginning of this issue. They're employed throughout the Marvel Universe as bounty hunters. They're not just like mindless rodents for him to clear off of the surface of Ego's skin. So, a demerit for inadequate homework doing for that, I guess. It's a little uneven, and I feel like only a few pages of it are really aimed at us, people our age and fans of classic Marvel Cosmic. And even the parts that are supposed to be aimed at us are a little bit problematic for my taste. For one thing, I'm sorry that Rich Rider's father was apparently killed off-panel sometime within the last few years while Rich was lost to the Cancerverse. And one of the things I always liked most about Rich Rider as a character was that he's one of the few superhero characters in the Big Two's universes who had two living parents who were happily married. He even had a kid brother. He had a nice, healthy, whole nuclear family unit behind him. He wasn't one of these brooding orphans that so often people the pages of Superhero Cup. That's one of the reasons why I still haven't forgiven Jeff Johns for doing what he did to Barry Allen.
Ah, yes.
With Barry's parents, because he didn't think he had enough tragedy in his backstory. Now, that wasn't really ever an issue for Rich Rider, and I liked that. But now he's just back from the Cancerverse, or so it seems, and we're told right away, like the very first panel of the very first page, oh, look, Rich Rider's dad, Charles Rider, is dead. So that's kind of depressing. And then right after that, Rich has what seems to be a hallucination of his mother as a decaying zombie. So yeah, something weird is going on with Rich. And between what goes on inside the issue and the image of a skeletal zombie-like Rich Rider in his Nova costume on the front cover, they're very strongly hinting, if not outright telling us on the surface level, hey, Rich Rider did not return from the Cancerverse unaltered or uncorrupted. It might not even be the real Rich Rider. It might just be like a sleeper agent sent by like a little nodule of the Cancerverse in Rich Rider form, even like mentally conditioned to believe that it is Rich Rider waiting for the right moment to strike and do horrible things here in the Marvel Universe proper. So it's as Chris said before, this does kind of feel like a story we've seen played out before, and it's kind of like your favorite story of all time, Brian, the Return of Barry Allen, where classic character X supposedly returns from the dead, and shock and surprise, it's actually a bad guy, incognito. So, yeah. So I'm a little trepidatious about this. To tell the truth, I probably would not even have picked up this first issue if we had not decided to do it as an off-the-rack, because I'm a little worried about what the ultimate treatment of Rich Rider is going to turn out to be. And in this first issue, we don't even get an answer to the question that was asked by that solicitation that you read, Brian, asking us how will Sam Alexander respond to this stunning return? We don't even see that in this issue because Sam hasn't even caught up to this Nova signal his helmet warns him of. He hasn't even found Rich Rider yet by the end of issue 1. So I don't think I'm going to be going out and getting the rest this arc. I'm going to wait until the reviews come in and I find out for certain whether the return of Rich Rider to the Marvel Universe is legitimate and lasting. At that point, I'll seek out back issues or maybe buy a trade or something. Right. Because I do like the Rich Rider character.
Which, at this point, as we recorded this, it may already be out there because we're several months behind in this issue.
True. But these came out in December, and it's now March, so we're not further in than like 4 issues.
Well, you never know.
So, unless maybe Marvel's double shipping a few, which is hardly out of character for them. But anyway, I am interested enough in the fate of Rich Rider, and that mystery is well enough constructed in this first issue, in between all the Sam Alexander fluff that I'm sorry, but I'm just not into. I do care about what's going on in this comic enough to at least borrow future issues. So, by definition, this becomes a borrow rating for me.
Okay. All right, then last but not least is Supergirl Being Super #1 of 4, written by Mariko Tamaki, art and cover by Joelle Jones. This is the original solicit again. Flying and crushing coal into diamonds may come easy, but try popping a Kryptonian zit. Caldecott honor-winning and Eisner Award-winning writer Mariko Tamaki from This One Summer teamed with Eisner Award-nominated artist Joelle Jones, Lady Killer, for a coming-of-age tale like you've never seen before. But while growing pains shake up Kara's world, a deadly earthquake rocks the small town of Midvale beneath her feet. The Girl of Steel has a choice. Let her world die or overcome her adolescent insecurities and be super.
But we have seen this story before about 1 million times. Anyway, go ahead, Murd.
This is a good point, but nonetheless, I actually give this a buy.
I think this episode has made me realize how old I've become. I had to put this down. I found myself putting this book down repeatedly before I actually finished it. It's definitely not a pants because I think overall it's a good package. I think the art is especially good in it. There's a couple of especially striking pages. But it's a great teen book, Runaways by Brian K. Vaughan. That's a damn good book about
Stay on target! Stay on target!
This is
switch to targeting.
I'm sorry, I was bored to tears. Low borrow.
Differences of opinion are healthy, Chris. It's what makes for a good, healthy exchange of ideas and good radio. But yeah, this I did enjoy this actually. It's a good, it's well crafted. It's a good depiction of rural, small town life, and I'm kind of a sucker for that kind of thing. It's set in the little town of Midvale, which is where Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, originally settled when she came to Earth in the Silver Age. But it's kind of altered to be more similar to Smallville, home of young Clark Kent. In fact, the early stages of the Supergirl backstory have, in many different ways, been recrafted to more closely resemble the classic coming-of-age in Smallville portion of Clark Kent's origin story. And that may be why Chris is said to begin with here that we've seen this story so many times before. Because I think a self-conscious effort is being made to make this version of Supergirl's origin hew closer to the Superman origin. Whether or not that's a good idea, I'm still not 100% sure myself. But just taking the story on its own merits, I think it does do the portrayal of a couple of young high school girls coming of age in a small rural town fairly well. I'm especially enamored of the little scene set in the Lion's Den, the little snack shack or little like hole-in-the-wall, small-town rural eatery, diner, snack shack. A little hot dog and ice cream cone joint. I'm fascinated by places like that. I seek them out when I'm traveling by car. I literally dream about little small-town ice cream parlors like that, and I just like Joelle Jones's depiction. She must have found like an actual picture of such a place and used it for reference. So yeah, that's enjoyable. The action is set on or around Kara's 16th birthday, approximate. She and her adoptive parents are not sure exactly how old she is since they found her in a little pod, which we, the readers, realize is a spaceship, but she and her family don't seem to be aware of that, which crashed into the Danvers family cornfield about 8 years ago. They estimated that she was 8 years old biologically at that time, so they're going with this is her 16th birthday. And she's clearly undergoing her adolescent growing pains, which are a little more painful than most because she's a Kryptonian in earthly culture, not that she has any idea as yet what a Kryptonian is. So it's a journey of self-discovery here. It's fun to watch her. She's just being a teenage girl. I feel that the voices of the characters ring true to that age bracket. For as much as I know, as a 38-year-old guy who was isolated from the average 16-year-old when he was a 16-year-old. So take whatever I say about that with a grain of salt. But it was enough to fool me anyway. It seemed genuine to me. And the interplay between Kara and her two close friends, Jen and Dolly. Dolly is a self-described badass dyke, and Jen is this really driven, focused, no-nonsense, ultimately humorless professional athlete in training. And the verbal sparring between Jen and Dolly, the two friends, is really very entertaining. It reminds me, and this is a reference that Jamie D would appreciate if he were here to hear it. It reminds me a little of Monk and Ham, of Doc Savage's group of assistants. They used to take little pot shots at each other constantly in Doc Savage stories. So Jen and Dolly kind of remind me of that. And they evince a lot more personality than, unfortunately, Kara, the main character, gets much opportunity to, since she's so inwardly focused, worrying about the physiological changes she appears to be undergoing, which, since, as we know, she's an alien, are a little more extreme than those of the average teenage girl. Again, if you take it just as a little coming-of-age in rural small-town America story, I think it works very well. It's well done. I like the Mariko Tamaki's writing. Joelle Jones's art is very nice. When you get down to it being a Supergirl story, though, that's where I become a little puzzled by some of the creative choices made. As I've already alluded to, this story is the sort of thing that would have been classified or branded as an Elseworlds tale had it been published in another decade, because it seems to take place in an alternate reality in which Superman doesn't exist. For all we know from this first issue, Kara is apparently the first Kryptonian to land on Earth. Otherwise, her parents and she would probably recognize the S-shield emblazoned on the outer hull of the pod she arrived in. They might even know what Krypton. So clearly, Superman, the big cousin Kal, isn't around to meet Kara when she arrives on Earth and to tell her about her origins. And she seems to have no memory of her time on Krypton, even though was apparently 8 years old when she arrived on Earth. She's got some kind of amnesia. So her heritage, her alien heritage, is kind of a blank slate for her. So, she doesn't have big cousin Kal there hovering in the background, over-determining her life and her very identity. And, so we don't have the struggle that's kind of typical of writers of Supergirl comics in the past, of her to define herself in contrast to Superman. That's been completely subtracted from the character's story here in this miniseries. But of course, to balance that out, they're basically, what's happening in this story is they've taken Superman out of his classic growing up in Smallville backstory and plugged Kara in. I mean, if the aim of the creators is to just show us how that story might have played out differently if Clark Kent had been female, they're kind of succeeding just fine with that. But if their aim was to establish Kara Zor-El as an individual with not as beholding to her big cousin as she's been depicted in the past, they could have done something other than stick her into her big cousin's origin story, if you see what I'm saying. So I'm still a little on the fence as to whether, what good that particular creative choice was. They've turned Midvale into kind of a poor man's Smallville. The Danverses are at least somewhat interesting characters. No one's going to confuse them with Ma and Pa Kent. Mr. Danvers is kind of like a hipster lumberjack conspiracy nut who also owns a farm, and his wife is this perky Edie McClurg style, like Midwestern working mom. So yeah, they're at least interesting and original figures, and that their dialogue is entertaining. So whatever the creative team really has in mind with plugging Supergirl into the classic Superman origin story here, whatever value you want to assign to that. One thing does seem certain is that Tamaki is trying to use the Supergirl origin tale she's telling here as kind of a convenient metaphor for the disconcerting, occasionally disgusting experience of puberty as experienced by a teenage girl, like the wonders and horrors of teenage female adolescence. And So and Supergirl's alien physiology and heritage is kind of a convenient vehicle for that, as witnessed by the discovery of a hitherto undocumented Kryptonian ability, the Super Pimple Pop. I mean, that was mentioned in that actually, it was in the solicitation.
Yeah, I know.
But it actually does happen.
I don't need to see it. No,
yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Look at it.
No, I don't.
Look at it.
No.
It's a full-page spread, and my goodness.
Done plenty of that in my own time.
Not like this, pantaloons.
That's okay.
You didn't need a mop to clean this one.
Oh, stop it.
So, yeah, it's... just crossing new frontiers as far as Kryptonian origin stories goes. So yeah, I was charmed by this. I'd kind of like to see how it the whole thing eventuates. Whether we're going to find out any more about this reality and whether like maybe Rocket's eventually going to show up with baby Kal-El in it, and maybe an adult Superwoman will be there to meet him. I'm not sure. We've only seen 25% of the whole canvas that Tamaki and Jones are producing here, and I, for one, liked the first 25% enough that I'd like to see the whole thing. So, yeah, I liked it. I gave it a buy.
Now, I'm assuming other issues have come out. Have you gotten any of those?
Only the second issue has come out.
Have you skimmed it?
Actually, I haven't.
Ooh, okay.
I might not have received it yet, actually.
Okay.
All right, Murd, I'm gonna actually, as I look at this again, I'm gonna upgrade this to a solid borrow.
Okay.
Because as I went through the whole book again while I was listening to your, as always, thoroughly enjoyable critique, and I think the art in this is outstanding. Joel Jones's work here, and this is the main reason I'm giving this book sort of a very solid borrow instead of that unenthusiastic low borrow. Just her attention to detail, like when she's in the kitchen with her adopted parents, the detail to that kitchen is amazing. The way the artist really captures people's personalities and their expressions, like the way you describe the mother, Murd, right on the money. If you look on the page with the kitchen, and when the mother's saying, "Do you want some soap, sweetie?" She's reaching out to her. Look at the expression on her face. I've seen mothers with that type of expression. The art here this is beautiful artwork. And of course the full page spread where she's lifting up the tractor nonchalantly while she's focused on her phone. Beautifully rendered. This is as I went through this again, I missed the mark here, but this is beautiful artwork. And the scene where she pops for lack of a better term, the Kryptonian zit, and the look on her face when she asks herself in her head, "Am I a bug?" It's well done. Her friends are well rendered. You really get a sense of their personality just by the way they dress, the way they carry themselves, their expressions, their hairstyles. This is visually stunning. The reason why I'm still sticking with the borrow category in general is, though, again, this could also a lot be more me than it is the book. Because unlike our first selection, this is a very well executed comic. I was just a bit. Bored is too harsh. Just a bit like, all right, I've been here before many, many times, and this type of story just doesn't fire my engines as much as it may have in the past. Granted, there are still books about adolescence that I've read that I think are amazing, and still hold up for me very well. I would not run out and pay $5.99 for the next issue. Hence the borrow, but this is a well executed book. It's well crafted, and the artwork is some of the best artwork I've seen so far this year in the comics I've read.
Have you tried Lady Killer, Chris?
I have not.
Yep, that's a creator-owned project of Joelle Jones. She both writes and draws it. It's about an early 60s housewife who has a secret life as an assassin.
Oh, I remember hearing about that, Murd. I'll have to give that a shot. Thanks for that reminder. Well done, sir.
My pleasure.
All right, is that it for you then, Chris, on the book?
Yes.
All right. So I guess we'll open up the floor if we have some time to some other things we've recently read. I'm in one of my low points right now where I'm not really reading any comics. I'm just watching more TV and just doing other things lazy. But I did read a recent comic that Adam was very kind to lend me, Scooby-Doo Team-Up number 23, featuring Quick Draw McGraw and El Kabong, his alter ego. This This is a title that I know you and Shane just praise endlessly, the Scooby-Doo Team-Up.
Every chance we get.
And, I mean, I can take or leave Scooby-Doo, not the biggest fan, but when you keep mentioning all these team-ups he has, I'm just very fascinated. So I was on a recent El Kabong kick, and this just came out, so Adam lent it to me, and this is fantastic. This is a definite buy. This is written by Sholly Fish, with art and cover by Scott Geralds. Wonderfully rendered. I felt as though I was actually in the TV episode, following along with this. I laughed out loud several times. There's some great guest stars. One of the guest stars does, I wrote that exclamation points here, Snuffles.
Who is Snuffles? I'll show you. Hey, Snuffles! Yeah. Snuffles will do anything for a dog biscuit.
Sure will.
Anything? Anything. Will he jump through that window? Why, sure. Watch. Here's a dog biscuit, Snuffles.
And of course, the
then
begging.
jump through a window. Catch.
And then just wrapping himself around himself. And leaping into the air. And that is perfectly rendered in the comic book here. Oh my God! There's
Wow.
some other guest stars. So I mean, it's just enjoyable to see this again. I got a real kick out of this book, and like all the tales like this, just bring from a Hanna-Barbera characters into the mix.
Well, a lot of the time they're meeting DC Universe characters.
Okay.
But yeah, there have been a few Hanna-Barbera team-ups too.
Just terrific. And I question, unless I guess kids have the boomerang, how many young readers have any idea who Quick Draw McGraw is?
Your guess is as good as mine. And I got to tell you, Boomerang, as of, I think, like this past year, is not what it used to be. They've rebranded. So now it's basically just a second window for the same stuff they're showing on Cartoon Network.
Ugh.
Yeah, they're not showing nearly as many classic cartoons as they used to.
But anyway, yeah, so that's a great issue, and I'm sure it's a great title.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah, thank you for letting me read that.
Seemed like your wheelhouse.
Yes. Anything else for anybody they've recently read?
Go ahead, Murd.
Well, Chris, have you read Rockstars yet?
No, I have not. It's on my pile, but I've not read it yet.
Yep. Well, this is something that piqued both our interest when it showed up, and it's something else from the December previews.
Okay.
Well, though it would have been the October previews, I guess, but this was released about the same time as our Off the Recs for this month. But yeah, written by Joe Harris, art by Megan Hutchinson. It's it's like an investigative mystery tale with a supernatural bent and a rock and roll flavor. It's about a young man named Jackie who, with the help of his cat Skydog, he's got kind of a ESP thing going on. He can use tarot cards. He's out there trying to solve the strange supernatural mysteries of rock and roll with the help of his partner, Dorothy Buell, rock and roll journalist. One of the things that happens in the first issue is it shows how those two characters meet. It's a great premise. The artwork is very good. It invokes those classic like 70s rock posters. The coloring is by Kelly Fitzpatrick, and it makes you want to hold it up to a black light. And,
Oh, wow, Murd, I can't wait to read this. Huh.
in fact, the first arc is called Nativity in Black Light. And it's investigating the disappearance of a couple of groupies back in 1974 after going to a concert by a pretty obvious Led Zeppelin doppelganger called Blue Rider. So it's a great premise. And the artwork is very appealing to the eye. It suits the subject matter to a T. It's a tiny bit overwritten, though. One thing I'm learning about Joe Harris is that he's not that skillful at exposition. You remember that Snowfall book that we did as an Off the Rack about a year ago, Chris?
I do, sir, yes.
Yep, Joe Harris also wrote that. So exposition and world building was proved to be a bit of a weakness of his in that issue, too. And, this first issue, he kind of overlabors in terms of narrative captions, establishing the premise. It's like, okay, we get it. There are mysteries in rock and roll, and this guy solves them. Just move on. It reads a little bit like the pilot to a new network new network series, like an hour-long mystery drama kind of thing. But if it were just produced as a TV series, I probably wouldn't watch it. But the artwork, presented in this format, this sequential art form that we all love so much, it holds one's attention. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be reading this month to month.
All right. I have a couple things to talk about quickly.
Sure.
I was very excited when the new issue of Rebels came out, the Brian Wood, Andrea Moody saga about the era during and after the American Revolution. This picks up where the main character, Seth Abbott, who was the featured player in the first story, he's an older man, he has a family, and it deals with America struggling with a sense of self. Is it going to be a nation that builds a navy and projects power? Is it going to focus more on its interior? And Abbott's son is essentially very gifted. He's very focused on shipbuilding, and he's clearly essentially almost a genius, it seems, in that sense, and how he grows up and becomes involved in the effort to build a navy for America to deal with the Barbary pirates. So if you love the first Rebels series, this is also highly recommended. And this is a book that, again, this is why Brian Wood is one of the best writers in comics, because he addresses historical themes, and he clearly does his homework. The attention to detail is – take it from me, folks. I'm not an historian, but I'm very much a student of history, and this is right on the money. Magnificent. James Bond 007 Felix Leiter. So Dynamite has the James Bond license, and now they're doing a miniseries about Bond's CIA comrade who has appeared in several of the films and in many of the novels. I've enjoyed every offering by James Bond that Dynamite has produced. This is no different. Beautiful artwork. This is by James Robbins, so I had to read it immediately for that reason alone.
That's it.
He does not disappoint. Aaron Campbell is the artist. It's lighter, involved in intrigue in Japan in the modern day, and also his history with a shadowy Russian operative who, of course, is a gorgeous woman. Great James Bond style intrigue. I wanted to also laud the latest issue of Black Hammer #7, where Jeff Lemire and Dean Ormston's saga, but we talked about this before, about this team of sort of fallen Golden Age heroes are sort of exiled into sort of this sort of pocket universe they can't seem to escape. This book goes into the actual Black Hammer character himself and what happened to him. Once again, this is one of the best titles out here right now. If you love the superhero genre, if you love the Golden Age, and this book clearly makes a lot of tributes to Kirby as well, right down to the artwork. Definitely check out Black Hammer #7. I tried the first part of the Superman Reborn series. This is Superman #18 by Tomasi and Gleason. I have not read Superman since was it Jerkins League Weeks who did that great miniseries?
Lois and Clark.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I've not read it since then, so I'm a little behind, but they're exploring the fact there seems to be another Clark Kent who has materialized, and he seems to be wreaking havoc with the time stream continuum, and ultimately it seems like Lois and Clark's son John may himself be in jeopardy as a consequence of this. Interesting setup issue. Didn't floor me the way the first issue of Lois and Clark did, but I enjoyed this, and I'll probably stick it out for the remainder of this issue, so I don't want to spoil too much on that. And finally, I have to trumpet again. God, this is amazing. Killer Be Killed #7 by Brubaker and Phillips. I nominated Sean Phillips as Artist of 2016. If he keeps producing work like I see in issue 7, he's my nominee for 2017 too. And this, even though it's only March, this may be my nominee for Best Single Issue of the Year.
Wow.
The artwork in this is just a lot of the framing device is looking at an old photo album, and the way he designs it. I've rarely this is art is on a whole nother level. This guy. I mean, I've been following his career since Sleeper and Scene of the Crime. He just keeps getting better. This is a master at work here in this issue of Killer Be Killed. Brubaker and Phillips, without question, one of the best teams in comics right now. So those are my quick little shout outs there.
Excellent. So how you fix for time right now, Chris?
I got maybe 5-10 minutes, my friend.
You want to talk a little bit about Iron Fist? What you've seen of it? The Netflix
Sure.
series?
I'll give a quick little riff on it.
All right. Adam's going to leave. Go into the soundproof booth.
I'm withdrawing briefly.
We'll give him the old high sign when he's back.
So just to give people a heads up. A, this is a spoiler to a degree, and B, I've only seen the first 7 episodes, so I can't comment on the whole series
I've
yet.
seen the whole series.
Okay, so
let me just give him my comment. No, my comment
Sure.
echoes what our co-host Danny posted on Facebook, and so I'm just going to repeat what she said, because this is her line. Bland Dan Rand fights the hand. That's essentially what I can say about that. I found Danny Rand to be a very bland character, and Finn Jones just seemed to be overwhelmed with people around him, and just seemed to be just, blah. Didn't really seem to have any gusto to them, in my opinion. But I just want to let now Chris go. Please go.
Sure. Again, it's 13 episodes, right, Pants?
That's correct.
Okay, so I've watched the first 7. I love Iron Fist. I've loved the character since I was a kid, so I was very excited for this show. And considering I've loved every Marvel and Netflix show up to this point, I have very high expectations. I won't say I'm disappointed, because I am enjoying the show, and I need to see the whole thing before I give sort of a more definitive take on it.
Certainly.
I do understand Danielle's reaction and yours, and my oldest son Ricky watched it. His reaction was, this is literally what he said. He said, "Meh."
Yeah.
And I get that. What I am enjoying about Iron Fist thus far is they're moving at a very different pace than some of the other shows. It's slower. It feels more methodical. Mm-hmm. And that's not bothering me, because I think it works for the fact that this is a character who has been thrust out of the world of Kunlun into a world he has not traveled in since he was a little kid.
Right.
So him trying to find his way, that's working for me. I think that works within the world of that character. I find the Meacham brother and sister some of the most interesting parts of the whole show. Their dynamic, the intrigue with the Rand Corporation. Love Colleen Wing.
Oh yes,
perfectly cast.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Perfectly cast. She's got it down pat. And anytime I see Night Nurse Rosario Dawson, I'm just grinning ear to ear. One of my favorite actresses.
Although she's Claire Temple.
She's right. It's like an amalgam of the two. So
right.
That world they've been building in the Netflix universe, it's all clearly there. Like the hands there.
Yep.
They're built, like they're definitely plugging him into this sort of this grander tapestry they're creating, and I'm digging all that. As far as Finn Jones's performance, I'm not going to give a definitive take on it yet. I will say that I understand the criticisms I've been reading and hearing from people I know and just in general. I wouldn't say it's flat. It's just I'm struggling with it, Pants, because part of it makes sense to me, because he lived in he lived in Kunlun for almost his whole life. So he's gonna his temperament, his perspective, it's going to be different than and in the Iron Fist comics they do address that in various ways throughout the years, especially early on. So I think I see what they're trying to do with the character in that sense. I don't know if it's fully working for me yet. Again, I'll come back to you on the show. I apologize when I've watched the whole thing, which will be probably the next week or two. Mm-hmm. Which has struck me, which I'm not fully sold on yet, is how they're portraying the kung fu in this show.
Okay.
It's more. Now, granted, when we see martial arts in the other shows, it's really like hyperkinetic and aggressive and fast, and maybe that's not as realistic because it's super heroics in a sense. This seems more like and again, I know nothing about kung fu beyond movies, so forgive me here, but I'm not sure if it's a case of the actor really doesn't know kung fu very well, so they're trying to mask that, or are they trying to show a more deliberate, almost realistic style of fighting. So I'm not sure on that either. What I will say though is, if they're going to be true to the character, Iron Fist, besides Shang-Chi, is the most powerful martial artist in the Marvel Universe. There is no way he's going to have trouble dealing with like a Rand security guard in the file room. Mm-hmm. That fight should have been over in about 3 seconds. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little taken aback by. He's clearly a badass. There's no question about it, and I like the portrayals of the Iron Fist itself, but. I'm not fully sold on the way they're portraying him as when I think of the character of Iron Fist, especially as the warrior. essentially. But again, I'll come back to that. I'll come back to this when I've watched the last 6 episodes. So I'm enjoying it. Just it's not. I'm not as riveted by it as I am by the preceding Netflix shows.
Right. Yeah, so. I liked it. Okay, it didn't wow me over, but I could see now what you're saying, that there's a possibility of why he was so Dana Rand was so sort of like flat or meh, to use your son's quote. Is that okay? He was in a monastery for 15 years. I mean, that didn't really connect with me, but I just thought that's one of the things that really stood out to me, is how just sort of like meh he was compared to everything else going around him, the other intensity of the actors in the scenes with him.
So,
okay,
that's my take.
All right. Come on back, Adam. It's all clear. All is forgiven.
And, gentlemen, I have to apologize. I have to depart, and I have a family issue that I have to not nothing terrible, but something I have to address.
Oh, certainly.
So I apologize for departing, my friends.
All right.
And I will, of course, be in touch with both of you very soon to schedule our next moment of wonderful fellowship.
Exactly.
Already looking forward to it, Chris.
Good night, brothers.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Take care.
Good night, sir.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
All right. Well, now, as we record this episode, it is the night before the finale of Season 1 of the TV show Legion on FX. So we have seen up to this point the penultimate episode. I love that word. I had to work it in there.
The penultimate episode.
So you've seen all the episodes at this point as well, all 7 of them.
So I have.
Okay, so we'll try to have a little discussion about this as well. And I am really digging this series. I didn't know what to expect going in, because it's about David Haller. He's a troubled young man diagnosed as schizophrenic, but after a strange encounter, he discovers special powers that will change his life forever. And now, of course, we know from the comics, the character of Legion is Charles Xavier's son.
Right.
Which hasn't been expressly mentioned in the episode so far. But there was a sort of blink and you miss it. Or maybe, well, you obviously caught it.
I didn't blink.
Sort of a pan in one of the flashbacks or whatever to an X on a wheelchair going by. So I like that. But yeah, this thing is just, I can mention, it's visually stunning. You go into his mind and it's out there, and I love it. And the characters interacting with the one guy who can stop, you can go into your memories. And of course, Sid, who when he touches you, you switch bodies. Aubrey Plaza as Lenny is just worth the price of admission, especially in that last episode with the whole silent movie thing going on here. What do you think of the show so far?
It's an overtly surrealistic take on the superhero genre. It's like nothing else that's been attempted, certainly not on like a serialized television format. Mm-hmm. One thing I'd say about it is one thing I'd say against it is that the pacing could be a little bit snappier, but it's enjoyable television. It's a little dark, but it's also it's got its moments of levity and outright kookiness. Some of the characters are a little underdeveloped. The mutant whose power is to jump into people's memories, I feel like he hasn't been getting nearly as much play as he should. But other characters are a lot more interesting. I agree with you that Aubrey Plaza is great as Lenny, who is actually just one of many forms adopted by the psychic parasite that's been dwelling inside of David's mind since childhood.
The Shadow King.
The Shadow King. And may I add, called it.
Really?
Yeah, just go back to the first time we talked about Legion on the show. I said I think it's probably going to turn out to be that Humpty Dumpty looking demonic thing hiding in David's head. It's going to turn out to be Amal Farouk, the Shadow King.
Let's see if he's right.
Previously on Comic Geek Speak,
episode 1642.
And as things go, well, there's a pretty deep mystery in place here. You know, we're trying to figure out what the real extent of Haller's powers are, what's going on in his mind. He keeps having visions of this grotesquely obese, demonic-looking, like evil Humpty Dumpty-looking guy, who I'm hoping is going to turn out to be Amal Farouk, the Shadow King, who is a powerful mutant telepath from the Marvel Comics.
Okay. Well, there you go. And now back to the show. Look at you.
Yes, it struck me like mere days before watching episode 7 that, oh my God, the beagle that David hallucinated having as a child was named King. It's the significance of that didn't hit me until like right before it was confirmed like explicitly for us in episode 7. So it's a good use of a classic Marvel character there as created by Chris Claremont. And, I would be surprised if we don't get a cameo by either, like, James McAvoy or Patrick Stewart. If not by the end of this season, then certainly sometime in a future season.
Because this is an 8-episode season, which I think is an interesting contrast to what Netflix is doing with their shows. Those are 13 episodes. And I've been reading a lot of things online about, it seems to go on sometimes too long. There's some filler with that. And they're talking about me having them shorter. This is not. This is an 8-episode season. Actually, has been renewed for a second season.
Good to hear.
So it's like, I like. And again, it's just you have to really watch. You can't like turn away because there's a blink and you miss it thing. So it's like there's so much going on, fast-paced editing and the craziness. You really have to pay attention to it. And I like shows that have so much going on, you really have to pay attention because otherwise you have to have things on in the background. No, you can't have things. You have to watch the damn show.
Which is, I'm not used to that, actually, these days. I'm kind of gotten into the bad habit of consuming television in a state of distraction while trying to read a comic book or write a check to pay a bill or do other things at the same time. But, you are right. Legion does kind of demand your attention, and so much of it is in the visuals. It's not just people standing around uttering dialogue at each other. It's really making the most of the televisual medium.
And like I said, as we record this, I haven't shown the last episode yet, so if we say things that are really out there, forgive us. But we're looking forward to this season finale.
Including the need to embarrass your co-host.
Oh, no. Right. Once again, it's time for Muddle the Murd, our trivia segment on the show. Yeah, you haven't done too well of recent. No, sorry about that. But yes, we still have plenty of artwork to give away for if you happen to muddle the Murd. And this episode has some new pieces going up. If you happen to muddle the Murd, because I think the last time you gave away the sketch card from Alan Davis, The Invisible Woman.
Oh, yes.
And another unfinished piece, I believe.
It was just that and the Star Wars poster.
Right.
Although I threw in a little something extra.
Oh, look at you throwing things in extra. All right. So in this episode, and going forward until you are muddled, we're going to be giving away another 2 pieces together. First, an Otis Frampton illustration of DC's Trinity as little young kids, cool. Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And along with that, a sketch by Sean Galloway of Spider-Man with sort of the half Spidey mask and the half Peter Parker.
Oh, yes.
So another combo pack here. And these could be yours if you muddle the Murd. This episode's contestant is Justin Elliott. Okay, and here's his attempt.
All right, I'm listening.
Question 1, pre-1970s independence. In the 1950s, Archie comic strips had, before the introduction of Moose, a bully with an alternative name. Who was this character?
Fangs Fogarty?
I don't know if that's true or not, but the one he has listed here is Big Buck Buckland.
Okay. I remember there was a Fangs Fogarty character on the new Archie's cartoon show in the 80s. I don't know if he came from the comics or not. He might have simply been made up for that series.
It looks like he was also in the Adventures of Little Archie.
Oh, the big bull.
Yeah.
What was his full name again?
You said Fangs Fogarty.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the
other character? Yeah.
That was Big Buck Buckland.
Okay. And so you looked up Fangs Fogarty? Did such a character ever exist?
Oh yeah, he existed. Yes. But it looks like it was in the Little Archie universe.
Okay, but not in the 50s.
Doesn't appear so.
Okay.
I could be wrong. We'll have to go to the judges later on for that.
Still, it was a better guess than I thought, even if it wasn't correct.
All right.
Moral victory.
Question 2, 1970 to 2000 DC Comics. In the late 80s, DC introduced Extraño, their first openly gay character. Who was Extraño's main antagonist?
Main antagonist? He was a member of the New Guardians. That's about all. I didn't know he had an arch nemesis of his own. I have no. I'm going to say like Floro, alias Floronic Man, because he was a teammate.
No, the answer is Hemogoblin.
Oh, okay.
An AIDS vampire.
Okay. Poorly conceived character on many levels.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on from that.
All right. Post 2000 Marvel Comics for question 3. It's all or nothing now.
All right.
In 2014, Marvel Comics introduced a member of the X-Men who had apparently been with the team for years, though they had not been shown before, is what it says here in this question. Who was this X-Man?
Well, this is probably not the right time frame for 2014. I'm just thinking back to Ed Brubaker and his Deadly Genesis thing, which I'm almost positive is longer ago than that. But I'm going to say Kid Vulcan.
No, the answer here is Forget-Me-Not, a mutant with the ability to be forgotten as soon as you aren't interacting with him.
Okay. Mark Waid came up with a character like that for his Legion run, like the 3-boot Legion. Okay. So, it would appear that I have once again been muddled.
It appears to be so.
Congratulations, Justin Elliott. Those are three pretty good questions.
All right. So, wow, we're going through the artwork here pretty quick. There's still plenty of more artwork to be had here to be possibly won by you if you happen to muddle the Murd. Again, send your questions 3 to comicgeekspeak@gmail.com, and please be sure to give the answers as well.
Right.
All right. Any other news or anything else to mention before we close up shop here and turn the lights out and go home?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, then, once again, this episode is brought to you by, make sure you have the stuff ready there, the stuff.
Oh, the stuff,
Get
right.
the stuff ready. By superherostuff.com. You can go to for all of your
superhero stuff. If you'd like to send us an email, our address is comicgeekspeak@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave a voicemail, call 267-702-6642. You can like us on Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @comicgeekspeak. You can visit thecomicforums.vanillaforums.com, which is our forum website, where you can leave feedback for this and many other episodes of our podcast, and also have engage in conversations with fellow listeners on comic-related topics that don't directly have to do with the show. We'd like to thank everyone who has made monetary donations to the show in the past. We really appreciate it. Couldn't have done the show without you. And as always, we are uniting the world's mightiest heroes, one listener at a time.